AMD, you done fucked up. Earlier this year, we said, AMD, don't fuck this up, okay? And they just can't seem to stop doing it. In a span of 48 hours, AMD has had to put out 3 panicked statements and updates about what it claims are a mix of errors and no, you don't get it. And on Sunday at about 4:16 p.m., which is only 4 minutes off from...
I'm already dreading this, but here we go.
The number representing what AMD was on when it put out its newest statement, it said, "You're confused." This is some Asus tier deflection. I'm pretty sure we have a lot of prior examples of what happens when companies say, no, you're all confused. Ah, yes, the classic blaming the customer aspect for being confused.
To give you an idea, I thought AMD was just really bad at making websites because a lot of you probably don't know this, but when I was setting up this graphics card and we were trying to update it, y'all remember when I was having troubles with my, and y'all were like, y'all need to update your graphics. I'm like, I thought I did. Turns out that the site itself, like the update system for their cards that had been out for a little bit at the time, would not update the graphics card. It would downdate them. Plus, not just that, plus it didn't, it would try to force one of the parts of the update that was fundamentally broken and had been for months. It would try to force that part of the update into it. And that part of the update would ignore the graphics card itself and make it seem like the graphics card wasn't there from their own site. Can we all give a round of applause to how broken that was? That not only did it downdate my graphics card, but part of the update it added would make my graphics card invisible. And I thought it was just, hey, someone was having a bad day. That's what I chalked it up to. But I later looked into it and I was like, huh? 90 days of family bonding? We're not having, no. I'm scared of you getting to 9 months now, Yui.
NZXT pulled an Asus by calling everybody confused. The millions of you, you're confused. Rather than accepting accountability for its
This is not the end of the support for RDNA 1 and RDNA 2. Your Radeon RX 5000 or RX 6000 series GPUs will continue to receive game support for new releases, stability and game optimization, security and bug fixes. The difference is that these products will now benefit from a dedicated stable driver branch. This approach helps deliver a smoother, more consistent experience for your gaming while insulating previous generational GPUs from rapid changes designed for brand new architectures. Why do I feel like reading that makes me feel dumb? Why do I feel like reading that makes something in that feels like I'm being told that I'm dumb? Oh, I know. It's this part right here. The difference in these products now benefits from a dedicated stable branch. Okay, yeah, sure. This approach helps deliver a smoother, more consistent experience for your games while insulating previous generational GPUs from rapid changes. See, here's the issue with that. These two can't coincide. These two can't coexist within graphics cards. All the graphic cards need to keep updating to be generally on the same, at least software level. How could you say that these two get the same amount of updates as these two? Doesn't feel like. It just feels like you're calling me dumb.
God-awful communication abilities, AMD leans heavily on the passive voice to say that, quote, there has been some confusion, end quote, and that they want to, quote, clarify misunderstandings, end quote. That's right, and next AMD said, we'll put a pin in that, and let's table that discussion for now before going back to a room full of the world's biggest techno douchebags to beg for more handouts. So it's confusion. It's not that AMD caused mass panic in their consumers as a fault of their own incompetent posting. Where they had to retcon not one, but 2 errors within 2 days, and it's also not that they moved a still irrelevant GPU architecture into a maintenance branch. No, it is instead...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like a maintenance branch implies that you're going to stop supporting it. How are you going to tell me that both are receiving stable updates if one is just being maintained? Why it's not being, like, actively worked on multiple times, like a month.
Your fault for being confused. AMD's brilliance is confounding to even the brightest among us. Among us. Among us.
Oh my god, he made an Among Us joke.
AMD passive voice non-apology statement where everybody else is confused, even though in this instance, AMD published objectively incorrect information, like with their USB-C situation, which was one of their 2 retcons they did on that post.
This reminds me of my parents. You know what my parents did? They got me boggles. And you're like, Boca, but you love boggles. And it's pumpkin boggles, so it's even amazinger. Every time I've eaten a pumpkin boggle in front of them, I've had cream cheese on it. Can you guess what they did? Because we don't have cream cheese in the house. For whatever reason. I don't know. They got me 2 dry bagels. I'm going to try to make like a sandwich out of the next one. But this one was not that great. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be honest. So if anyone of you want to donate to the cream cheese fund, I just need like $3. I'm kidding, of course. Listen! Listen! Yeah, right. Listen! I want a sandwich email like that now. But instead of sandwich, chocolate. Yes. Yes. We're brainstorming? We're having a brain bomb. Brain bomb. Have a nice day, Lizzie. Get some good sleep and a good rest. Thank you for the raid. You beautiful. Mwah. We're just getting mad at AMD over here. That's what chat wants to say. They want to get angry. I don't blame him. Sometimes you just want to get angry. Say, Cobalt, why can't you be as nice as Lucy, the Cobalt? Huh? Upstanding citizen. Upstanding. Upright? I don't know. I don't know how to say it. Don't ask me. Hi, BB. Captain Icy over here trying to eat. I see how it is. Wait a minute, you see how it is? Wait a minute. You know you bully me. Don't you lie.
And yet somehow, it's not a fucking error. It's everyone else who's wrong. It's
No, it's okay. I'll remember that. But you bully me every time, Yui. It's okay, BB. I love you. I don't, but, you know. You get head pats and brownies still. So I appreciate you. I don't love you. I appreciate you. Maybe.
blog post says
mixed
similar.
messages.
They've heard your feedback and want to clear up the confusion. This is corporate gaslighting shit that AMD has a long and storied history of, but for the last year they hadn't done a whole lot of it. Maybe they're having withdrawals. They missed the sniffing the gaslighting fumes and had to go back for another hit, even though meanwhile Nvidia is off in low fucking Earth orbit with its $5 trillion market cap, making partnerships with Palantir to ensure the AI-fueled destruction of privacy and personal freedoms and abandonment of the GPU gaming market. And somehow AMD can't just shut the fuck up and put the GPU in the bag.
Only follow
Before that,
cuties.
this video is brought to you by Haven and their new BF360 Flow case. The Haven BF360 Flow is a high airflow case with a focus on performance with the
Let me contemplate existence for a little bit there. Okay, back to
model that includes fans
daily
using two
scheduled
180mm front intake fans at 40mm thick in combination with a 120mm rear exhaust fan. In our previous testing of the case, we found its thermal performance to be among the best performers on our charts. The BF360 uses
Can I preface that I'm never getting an Nvidia card again?
a scooped shroud near the GPU that our smoke testing found deflects the air into the leftmost GPU fan for more targeted GPU intake. It also has marked cable management channels, rubber grommets on most metal contact points, and what we think is overall good build quality. Learn more about the Haven BF360 Flow at the link in the description below. Here's the quick background. In AMD's 25.10.2 driver release notes on October 29th, the company announced its spookiest announcement yet. Quote, new game support and expanded Vulkan extension support is available to Radeon TM RX 7000 and 9000 series graphics products, end quote, effectively signaling through its communication the end of new game support, or more correctly, optimizations for RDNA 1 and 2 in what we felt was the most unforthcoming way possible. These products are still shipping today and are used outside of DGPUs as well. The company also noted, quote, USB-C power charging has been disabled for Radeon RX 7900 series graphics products. Users requiring this feature are recommended to use a prior version, AMD Software Adrenaline Edition 25.3.1, end quote. Following
Oh, that just...
this announcement, AMD clarified its statement to PCGamesHardware.de through machine translation, explaining, quote, RDNA 1 and RDNA 2 graphics cards will continue to receive driver updates for critical security and bug fixes to focus on optimizing and delivering new and improved technologies for the latest GPUs. AMD Software Adrenaline Edition 25.10.2 puts Radeon RX 5000 and 6000 and RX 6000, which is there twice because they hate it so much, and RDNA 2 graphics cards into maintenance mode. Future driver updates with targeted game optimizations will focus on RDNA 3 and RDNA 4 GPUs, end quote.
So you literally said exactly what I thought, which is, oh yeah, like, we're still gonna update both of these, but one of them's just maintenance. The other will actually get updates for the games, which I'm pretty sure I have a 6000. Or do I have a 7000? I don't remember.
The company also retracted its statement about disabling the
Shows you how much I pay
USB-C power
attention.
charging for its RX 7900. As noted by PCGH's appended comment stating, quote, AMD itself has confirmed that the reference to the USB power supply was an error. In a statement to PCGH, AMD apparently said, quote, we would like to inform you that the recently released release notes for AMD software Adrenaline Edition 25.10.2 contained incorrect information. These have since been corrected. There are no changes to the USB-C functionality of the RX 7900 series GPUs in the 25.10.2 driver. The originally released release notes contained a ROM line that was removed. The release notes were updated accordingly. End subquote, end quote. The USB-C situation was what you would call a fuck-up, not confusion. And AMD's best outcome here would be to, we think, just simply apologize for at least causing confusion using a more active voice, if not doing the best, which is that saying it screwed up. Radeon's been the bastard child of AMD ever since AMD bought ATI, which was the parent company of the GPUs that became Radeon. And so it's really not a surprise in some ways that it can't get its own driver release notes right for GPUs that it is still actively supporting as well for its best branches, its kind of mainline branch. In response to the backlash, to the response to the post of the backlash on PC Games Hardware, AMD clarified its clarification to PC Games Hardware to Tom's Hardware in a second clarification post clarifying the original clarification. And clearly, this flow of communication does not contribute to the confusion in any way at all. This is the right way to do it, AMD. You should always make sure you put out a clarifying statement to one publication and then put out a different one to a different publication, clarifying the clarification. That's a good way to do
Morning
it.
lock on.
I'm getting real nervous about the amount of times that 1080 Ti is shaking. This is really the only GPU I care about in this office. Quote, new features, bug fixes, and game optimizations will continue to be delivered as required by market needs in the maintenance mode branch, end quote, which Tom's Hardware somehow bought wholesale as getting, quote, day zero game support and driver updates, end quote, but that's not what that says because those words are literally not in that statement. The statement says delivered as required by market needs in a separate branch. Market needs doesn't mean fucking anything. AMD is vague posting about its GPUs and their support, and then it's turning around and blaming the whole internet for being confused about AMD's own vague posting. So this is a non-committal attempt to stop the bleeding that AMD put out to Tom's Hardware before their newest one that they put out to everybody, and it didn't actually pledge to walking anything back. It did not walk back the statement. It just said it again in a slightly different way.
Gotta love that. Wait, you got a Coco's up?
And if anything, we think it's likely that it caused more panic and so-called confusion. And we'd also like to know at what point a user's needs constitute the market's needs, because that's not clear, and that's sort of the problem. So a couple days later, on Sunday, which is today for me, AMD emailed us this, quote, hi, comma, end quote. Hi. Quote, it appears there has been some confusion regarding the driver we posted on Thursday. To help clarify any misunderstandings, we have published a blog providing additional context. The full text from the blog is included below, +++, continued support for every Radeon gamer. We've heard your feedback and want to clear up the confusion around the...
What Radeon do I have? Let me check real quick. What AMD card do I have? I love how it's like actually annoying to figure out now. Hello? Where do you think you're going? I have $7,950. Okay, so I have a Ryzen 9. That means I'm still in the category where they're gonna keep updating me, right? I still want to get an update, 4090, but yeah.
The AMD
Just in
software,
case
as we all know,
Subathon
nesting
does not do
confusion
well.
twice makes it
That'll be fine.
exponentially powerful. This is for Adrenaline Edition 25.10.2 driver release. Quote continues, this update introduces two optimized driver paths, one for RDNA 1 and 2, Radeon RX 5000 and 6000 series, and one for RDNA 3 and 4. 7000 and 9000 series. Here's what this means for you, camel-cased colon. This is not the end of support for RDNA 1 and RDNA 2. I just want to point this out. I noticed that they were doing double spaces after some of the periods in this, which was originally how MLA and I think APA did it. Typically, I only see double spaces after periods today if something was written by a lawyer. I'm just saying, like, it's just... Anyway, let's continue. Space. Your Radeon RX 5000 and RX 6000 series GPUs will continue to receive bullet game support for new releases, stability and game optimizations, security and bug fixes. The difference is that these products now benefit from a dedicated stable driver branch, one built on years of tuning and optimization. This approach helps deliver a smoother, more consistent experience for your game.
No, I have a 7950. Oh. So I am in the branch that they're gonna forget about. Cool. Okay, yeah. Should I move up the subathon? No. It's still gonna be Christmas. I want everything to be months for the artists.
Insulating previous generation GPUs from improvements. No, wait, that's not what that says.
From rapid changes, leave me alone.
Designed for brand new architectures. I mixed that up. I thought they were saying it insulated them from good things. Also, just can we get some Dramamine for AMD here? The amount of spin is going to give someone a headache. Now, credit to them, this is cleverly written. Quote, our goal is simple, to give every Radeon gamer the best experience possible. By separating the code paths, our engineers can move faster with new features for RDNA 3 and 4, while keeping RDNA 1 and 2 stable and optimized for current and future games, end quote. Again, clever, but these are also synonymous with a reduction of support by nature of what they have written here for RDNA 1 and RDNA 2, which RDNA 2 especially, still actively sold into the market, actually heavily. Quote, our commitment. We've supported Radeon gamers for generations, and that commitment isn't changing. Whether you're gaming on an RX 5000, RX 6000, or latest RX 9000, you'll continue to get the reliability, performance, and care you expect from AMD. Space, not a lawyer, because we're all part of the same gaming community, and every Radeon gamer matters. AMD talks about how it has supported Radeon gamers for generations, but tell that to the 5 people who bought the Radeon 7 or the 20 people who bought Vega. AMD actually has a history of terminating long-term support or allowing some of its GPUs to fall off the cart when it's updating the drivers, and it does so sooner, we think, than its competitor NVIDIA. Actually, there's evidence of this, and maybe that deserves a whole separate video at this point, just like we did for Intel's driver updates. NVIDIA just has better long-term driver support, and that's in spite of the fact that NVIDIA is so busy right now, mostly with shoving AI suppository devices up its own ass. But it's still managed in between the ass up shoving AI suppository devices.
The last good card, as far as I'm aware, was the 4090 on the NVIDIA
process to maintain support for the 1080 Ti up until October, where it lasted for over 7 years of active support and will now get a commitment for 3 years of ongoing security support. Instead of trying to define this so-called market need in its TOM statement before its newest statement, re-clarifying the clarification of the clarification, we'd propose that AMD actually listen to its community and recommit the actively sold products into the primary driver branch. AMD's bullshit statement makes it seem like RDNA 2 GPUs aren't actively sold anymore, but they are, and a lot, like in lots of products. And it also makes it seem like they don't deserve the latest and greatest optimizations, improvements, and new features added to them for products that are still being sold. Like, this is some spin I saw on Reddit where people are like, it's old. Yeah, it's an old architecture that is sold today in brand new.
It just makes me mad just hearing some of this stuff. It makes me so, not even mad, I would say, more like disappointed. Like, AMD, you literally have a chance to, like, take a huge chunk out of NVIDIA, and you're doing this.
Fucking devices that they launched this year. Those should continue to get the priority branch of updates, not this sort of guise of, oh, we want you on the stable one that doesn't get all the latest and greatest stuff and the newest features for products that are 6 months old. So the fact is that The RDNA 2 product is all over the market today. You walk into a Best Buy and buy something with RDNA 2 in it. The bifurcation of support into two branches is especially concerning considering the number of RDNA 2 based products in circulation.
So I have this one right here. This one? 67XT. Is that the one I have? Wait. Lock on. Do you have one of these? No, wait. They said the 7s and the 8s were fine. Didn't they? Or was it the 6 and 7s that were bad? That they are putting on the maintenance. It's the 8. I love finding out that my card's 4 years old. Okay, it's 6 and 7s are freaking up.
Addition to all the discrete 5000 and 6000 series GPUs.
Wait, yours isn't even 6 months old. How are they putting yours in the... That's messed up.
And were released between 2019 and 2023 that are now shunted to the second favorite child branch. This branch into a maintenance mode will also affect the Ryzen Z2 Go processor that the company announced less than 6 months ago in June, currently sold in Lenovo Legion Go S handhelds, the Ryzen Z2A processor.
And this is why Steam Deck keeps winning.
Processors currently sold in the ROG Xbox Ally, which is brand new, the non-X variant, as well as all of the 9000HX notebook processors, which the company announced in January of this year. It also affects several current gen consoles, including the PS5, PS5 Pro, Xbox Series S, Xbox Series X. However, it's likely that these vendors self-maintain their devices. Several handhelds are affected, mini PCs, notebooks, not to mention Ryzen 7000 and 9000 series CPUs using iGPUs based on RDNA 2. In October of 2023, AMD released its Chinese exclusive Radeon 6750 GRE in both 10GB and 12GB variants, which means if someone bought it immediately at launch, their new graphics card would have already been moved into the secondary driver branch after seeing priority support for roughly 2 years. The Steam Deck also uses RDNA 2 architecture, but our understanding is that it should be less affected by the change due to Valve's use of doing things itself properly. And so AMD's
Yeah, I doubt it's gonna affect Steam. Didn't know Steam had it as well, but that actually makes sense. If like all these other newer ones are still using it.
Actions here relating
but
to
also Steam actively goes out of the way and they encourage like upgrading and stuff, and they encourage self like fixing and stuff.
RDNA 2 being a second-class citizen when it still sells so many products that have RDNA 2, we think is completely ludicrous.
It is ludicrous.
It really should be as simple as all actively sold new products get priority branch support. It is that simple. Their statement sounds nice. It's a bunch of fucking spin. That's what it is. If you read the statement properly, like carefully, you can see that. And they are trying to slide it past everyone. So even Intel is putting AMD to shame right now, as we showed in our recent Battlemage revisit, where we demonstrated how Intel tracked and resolved over 640 issues across 10 months, launched dozens of drivers in that period against AMD's lower quantity of updates, and made more consistent improvements to its software suite. All of this is happening at a time when confidence in NVIDIA's drivers for gaming is at an all-time low as a result of its botched, disgraceful launch at the beginning of this year. And AMD still can't keep itself out of trouble for 10 months. It's not about what AMD said initially at this point. It's also not about what AMD intends at this point. It's about AMD's response to the situation, where AMD's decision was to gaslight and manipulate its consumers into believing that they were confused.
Yeah, it doesn't look good for you when your first go-to is let's gaslight them.
Rather than just say, we fucked up, we're fixing it. It is that simple, it's reprehensible, and it really shouldn't be tolerated by anyone any more than NVIDIA's own driver fuck-ups that they had all beginning of this year. This is like right when AMD was starting to look kind of competent. Apparently that was by accident or by chance,
to have a nose.
but it is unbelievably disappointing. which the meme is it stands for another massive disappointment that continues to be proven true, that AMD can't just keep itself clean. Now, on the other hand, customers could always just stop buying AMD's products, or at least its GPUs, if it's gonna do this kind of stuff. Maybe then the company will realize that market needs include supporting the fucking product in a very clearly communicated way that consumers can't be confused by. If we're gonna go with the confusion narrative, you gotta get the communication straight. Look, we're glad AMD is saying it's going to do better than what it initially said, maybe. But AMD still misrepresented how these events unfolded by gaslighting, and likewise, it's still bifurcating its support and rebranding it with PR spin as a, quote, dedicated stable driver branch, unquote, rather than what it actually is, which is what they originally called it, a maintenance branch. Now, this isn't commonly known, but AMD actually makes its executives, when they sign up, wear a magnet in both their shoe and their mouth so that when they do interviews, they can shove their foot into it more easily. In an exclusive interview with Barron's in November of 2022 during its RX 7000 series launch, AMD's head of graphics engineering, David Wan, was asked, quote, what differentiates AMD's offering versus the competition, end quote. He responded, quote, think about it. You're buying a brand new graphics card and you would like it to be future-proof. This will give you a tremendous benefit, end quote. Now, because he told us to, we did think about it and we agree. That would be a tremendous benefit, especially if you could actually trust what he said in that interview. Thanks to NVIDIA ever looming as competition, AMD is in no position to be screwing up its communication this much. They should be doing anything they can to...
They should be doing anything they can to keep all of them on the dedicated branch. If these are in stuff being sold now, I don't care if you don't want to, you have to. Because it just feels scummy that you have all these things for sale now, and then you're going like, oh, by the way, these things aren't made good in like a month. That's what you're saying.
Positively set themselves apart from NVIDIA.
You're saying, oh, by the way, you're buying something that... This is almost planned obsolescence. I just realized that's basically planned obsolescence. Which, if I remember correctly, isn't that supposed to be illegal for companies to have planned obsolescence? Because that's clearly planned obsolescence right
typical
there.
Radeon fashion, though, AMD's currently only been successful at setting itself apart in the worst ways possible. NVIDIA, for all of the things that it's doing that really suck right now and are corrupt and awful, at least has a track record of maintaining game-optimized drivers with its GPUs with very clear communication, and they give you a long heads up as to when that's going to change. Take, for example, the 1080 Ti, which released in March 2017 and received its final game-ready driver in October 2025, corresponding with the end of Windows 10 support and after over 7 years of support. NVIDIA noted that quarterly security updates would be provided for the next 3 years. If customers have the choice between a GPU that has action and evidence-based updates for going on a decade and possibly as low as a year before being moved into a lower priority branch, we know which one they're going to pick. Even if that means paying more for just the assurance that the drivers will be properly maintained, maybe, throughout the graphics device's entire lifespan. And besides, they'll probably come with those AI suppository devices soon. You can it just transmits the data straight to NVIDIA from your... Okay, look, it's not the it's going to be difficult to market. It's not particularly easy to recommend the alternative in NVIDIA right now, which is a company hell-bent on selling out safety and privacy as Juan jumps for joy with Palantir's executives, but they sure look better in their driver support here than AMD. If a market leader does something good, especially if they're the larger one, the smaller ones are going to have to follow. That's part of the benefit of NVIDIA being where it is. The more they do that's good, the harder it is going to be for the smaller of the companies to follow them because they just have less funding. So that's why when NVIDIA did its paper launch at the beginning of this year, we basically begged AMD to not fuck this up, and they have repeatedly managed to do so.
Like, how do you screw up things so badly? I'm trying to, like, understand. Like, is there a way where this level of screw up isn't intentional? And I can't think of a way where it's not.
AMD's Radeon department continues to impress us with its ability to seemingly squander any opportunity it gets. Regardless of AMD's actual intent, its follow-up gaslighting response is damaging to its brand credibility. If there are any meaningful updates to this at this point, if AMD clarifies its clarification of its corrected driver post that it needed to clarify, then we'll let you know probably in hardware news. But until then, at least we're given a solid reminder that NVIDIA's stranglehold remains frustratingly unchallenged by its competitors. Intel is starting to challenge that in the low end, but Intel is owned about 4% by NVIDIA, which put $5 billion into it. So AMD, get to it. Come on. All right. That's it for this one before this card falls over. It's the most valuable thing here. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more. You can go to store.camerasnexus.net to support us directly, like by grabbing one of our Blind Eye t-shirts, which we sold to support our AI GPU black market smuggling documentary.
That's pretty good. It's in the Discord. Give it a like. And a follow. And subby. Definitely pretty good, though. Definitely pretty good. Good information to get. Smoke bomba, as always. Didn't yawn. Didn't hear it. Shut up, chat. But we got bad news on the doorstep, guys. Bad news on the doorstep.
Stop killing games. There's a topic I haven't covered in months, but there have been enough new developments that this
YongYea!
topic and situation
Still like a young no though today.
merits conversation. So stop killing games for those who don't know.
Also, lock on. This is gonna be a rush delivery. I'm gonna send it to you after stream.
There's a movement kickstarted by Accursed Farms over here. You can see this initial video when the campaign first started back in April 2nd, 2024, highlighting the reason why this movement is so important to this individual. And it's because, well, the basic law of commerce states that when you buy a product, you should be able to keep it, or at the very least, that's how many believe it should work. But with video games being digital and with the accessibility of video games being reliant on game companies being able to maintain their servers and all these things, and with all the DRMs and all the dependence on the game company side of things, we're seeing a lot of games just completely get lost where you can't download them again. Licenses are revoked entirely, and so the games are removed from your library.
I never understood that either. Like, license or revoke? Okay, yeah, and these people bought this game. It's theirs. It should stay theirs. Like, what?
The crew being the thing that kickstarted all of this, but there's so many examples of games that have disappeared from the face of the planet, so preservation isn't there. But beyond that, yeah, digital products are just being straight up stripped away from people's libraries, and that is just not acceptable when people didn't consent to that and when they purchase the product that's being stripped. Now, thanks to Stop Killing Games, we've gotten a number of petitions that have garnered an immense level of support. The main one being this European Citizens Initiative one started by Stop Destroying Video Games that
Number of statements. That's pretty big amount of people. I don't see anything under 50%. Malta being the lowest I've seen, and that's still 2,000 people.
managed to garner almost
Number of signatures 1,448,270. Wasn't the goal 500,000 or 750,000 or a million? And it almost doubled the million one?
1.5 million signatures, which forces this issue to essentially be looked at by the European Union government. And 12 days ago, we got some updates from the Stop Killing Games official subreddit.
And please realize that right before we got this answer, the people that basically represent all the companies that would love to keep stealing your games was like, no, this isn't an issue. No, it's entirely okay that we steal your games. That was basically their answer.
where they announced that the
Like they were telling you to stop.
verification process of the signatures is ongoing, as they need to make sure that the signatures are legitimate. So far, of the almost 1.5 million signatures, 689,035 signatures have been verified. The two largest countries.
That's almost, we're almost already at 700,000 legit ones. And they haven't even covered the two other countries.
Countries are still missing from this figure, Germany and France. So we can expect a lot more signatures to be verified over the coming days and weeks. The real good news is that currently, so far, just 3% of signatures have failed verification. So if that number
3%, guys.
holds true or stays within that range, that means that by the time signatures are finished being verified, we're going to be well above the 1 million signatures threshold that this
Which I think, if it does get over the million, then we don't have to worry about this news he's about to talk about.
movement needs in order
Because if it gets over a million, I think even the European Union realizes we can't not do this.
for it to be taken to the European Union government.
Morning,
so in
pain in
terms
your
of
ass.
presenting this
Hi.
issue to lawmakers and forcing lawmakers to actually take a look at this issue, we're doing really well. Now, another petition that garnered a lot of support is this specific one for the UK government and parliament that has garnered almost 200,000 signatures. This being a petition that ran for 6 months, so pretty good results. And we've gotten to a point now where the UK government has discussed this particular issue, with members of parliament being in support of the Stop Killing Games movement. And so today's story will focus on that particular development. Right here we have a Video Games Chronicle article published on November 4th, 2025 that details everything that was discussed. Now, unfortunately, the UK government didn't provide a favorable response, insisting that the current consumer protection laws are enough, and sympathizing more with game studios and companies and how
Because they were paid a lot of money to do so. But if this one goes through, it basically says, yeah, no, that's not good enough. And they'll be forced to address it. And they'll be forced to do something about it.
hard it might be to implement what Stop Killing Games is asking for. So let's dive in
Hi,
and
Sal.
take a look at this, starting with what members of parliament had to say
Is
in
YouTube
favor
chat
of
up,
the
by the
Stop
way,
Killing
guys?
Games movement,
Someone
starting
check
with
it for me.
Pam Coxier, MP for Colchester, who said the Stop Killing Games movement highlights the growing frustration among players who see their purchases vanish. It is clear that digital ownership must be respected, and that publishers should look to provide routes for players to retain or repair games even if the official service support for products ends. Nobody's asking for companies to support a product ad infinitum. They're just
Absolutely not. We like, I think everyone understands that, like, that would eventually become a money sink. Whereas, yes, darling. Hi, Alan. It working good. We need to make sure our YouTube kobolds can see. Or do I do? I'm still thinking about calling you peasants. I still think that's hilarious. But yeah, no one expects any company to support Infinitum, because no company would be able to do that. That's just not fair. Basically, what we're saying is, say it's an MMO. You can turn it offline, but if someone brings out a private server of it afterwards, you can't take it down. Because you were not supporting it anymore, someone else can. As long as it's, like, not like a full-on super company or something, I guess. Like, I'm trying to think. Would that cause a bad precedent? Basically, if it's grass movements kind of thing. Like, as long as we're not getting into the whole, oh, this company basically monetized a way to cause people to shut down their MMOs so that they can run them kind of thing. Yeah, that would be bad. Like, I feel like there should be like a little tiny rule in place for that. But overall, we should be allowed to run these games by ourselves at least. And no, Subscription services do not count. Nintendo. I'm not paying $40 a month to play my own Pokemon games. And you to run them subparly.
Asking that consumers be allowed to keep some aspect of that product that may not be officially supported, but is still at least on some level functional. Next up, we have Henry Tufnell here, the MP for Mid and South Pembrokeshire, who said, I agree about the extent to which games have a cultural identity and that to take them down erases a cultural and artistic heritage that is vital to society and to the wider industry as well. Video games are art, and we're losing so much art because of the games industry's complete lack of consideration for games.
It isn't even the games industry. It's the suits. It's them themselves. They don't care. They want money, 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 money. And these aren't like actual gamers. These are people that could care freaking less about games. They probably would use a pristine gold Majora's Mask Nintendo 64 cartridge as a coaster. That's how little they care. And I don't mean just any coaster. I mean like a coffee coaster. And they're very messy with their coffee. That's literally how much they care. Probably care even less than that, if it's possible. Like, if we had actual gamers in these industries, guess what? None of this would be a question.
Reservation. There's just such little effort on that front that so much of gaming history is being completely lost and is vanishing entirely.
Alan, you shut the hell up. Nintendo 64 games still play. My cousin has one. And I used to play it not even like 5 years ago. I want to say it at this point, because last time I got to play it was right before the pandemic, I think. 5 or 6 years ago. I want to say.
To the point where future generations will not know about the existence of many of these works of art, all of which are very culturally significant. It's among the newest forms of art, but it's still art, and an art form that will continue to live on for many, many years to come, due to the fact that it's, you know, the biggest industry in entertainment. Next.
It's worrying to see where this is going, but I think if we can get all those million signatures, they're all verified, I think they'll have to address it.
We got Mark Stewart's MP for Leeds Southwest and Morley, who argued that consumers are asking for a fairly simple guarantee from game makers that they won't suddenly be left with
There's
nothing
just some outs I want to
after
look at the end of
purchasing
this.
a game. Quote, I'm not demanding that publishers keep servers running forever. Campaigners are not asking for indefinite technical support. Correct. We are not asking companies to keep pouring resources into a game that they have finished with. What we're asking is fairly simple, that publishers should not be able to deliberately disable every copy of a game that consumers have already purchased, leaving them with nothing. Right, because that is plain and simply unreasonable. When you hit a button that says make a purchase or buy, the expectation is that you're buying a product that you get to keep. You're not clicking on a button that says rent. You're clicking on a button that says
You're right,
buy.
Stealth.
And there's a certain expectation that so long as you take care of that product, it is yours for you to access however much you want without any caveats or restrictions. Your ability to access the products you've purchased shouldn't be up to the companies who have
I do need to brush my teeth after this, so guys, by the way.
Made that product, because there's been a transaction that's taken place that says in exchange for me giving you my hard-earned money, you will allow me to engage with the product that you're selling, and I'll get to be able to have that product for as long as I want. Mark Stewarts also makes a great point to highlight that what we're seeing happening with video games is different from, say, an electronics company ending support for a device like an old printer, because at least that product still prints documents, it still works, it still functions. Whereas with video games, he said, quote, what we're seeing with games is different. It is as if someone bought that printer and then one day the manufacturer sent out a signal that deliberately stopped it from working at all, claiming it had reached the end of support. This is not support ending, it is obsolescent.
That's exactly my issue. The way they're doing it is literally planned obsolescence. They're forcing you to move to the next thing. They're forcing you to buy something new. Like, there's literally old laws in the book that say that companies cannot do planned obsolescence. And yet these companies are literally finding new ways to do just that.
Which has an entirely different meaning. That is the MVP quote right there. It is far too easy for companies to make the digital products if purchased completely obsolete. They have far too much wide-reaching control over products that consumers purchase, to the point where it disrupts the basic concept of commerce. And Mark didn't stop at that. He continued with, although I respect the government's position, I cannot help but observe
Why you angry, Seismic?
that what is happening in this space could be perceived as a breach of consumer protection under unfair trading regulations. The fix in this area could be as simple as there being more transparency. When a consumer purchases a game, it should be crystal clear that the publisher could deactivate it at any point. Basically, it should be clear
That's even the bigger issue. If they want to do the license thing, they can. Here's the issue. The second they put on there, clearly stated on the package that it's a license and support can end at any time, no one will buy it. And they know that. That's literally what the problem is. Is no one has an issue with that. If you want to go down that route, go ahead. If you as a company want to go down the route of, oh, we're selling you a license, which it wasn't at first. Like, Alan, never was that at first. They snuck that in a few years ago. No one reads those, Alan. Not one person in the world reads those legitimately. You just tell. Well, people are starting to, because it's starting to be BS. They're starting to put stuff in it, and it hasn't been there for a long time, Alan. I know that much. But no one has a problem with that. You just need to be honest about it at the gate. Not after I bought the game that you hide in like the middle of the TOS. And say, oh, but we told you. Here's the issue, Alan, about the whole TOS thing. Many government, like, judges have said that doesn't matter. If I cannot see it, like, easily, like, it's not, like, clear as day to me that this is a license. They've already ruled that TOSs do not count when it comes to the law. Because many judges have looked at a TOS that is out nowadays, where it's like 50 pages of law jargon, which, mind you, I have a high enough degree. Like, I've taken many studies to the point where I'm smart enough that I've been, like, officially recognized as someone that can translate a law document. And even I say no one should be reading a TOS. Because it's BS. 95% of a TOS is mumbo jumbo. It's stuff that everyone already knew. But sure, you got to put in there. 5% of it is stuff they've hidden. I cannot tell you how many TOSs have been brought up where, like, oh, there's a little sweepstakes in there that if you read it and you let them know, they'll give you something. Or there's something that's in, like, fine print, half the actual print of the actual TOS, hidden off to the side that says, oh, by the way, we can use your camera on your computer to look at your boobs. Okay? So, yeah. That's the reason why TOSs are clowned on. That's the reason why TOSs really don't hold really any weight in a court of law. It's because they're there to obfuscate. Like, sometimes legally they can hold a little water. Like, if it's a reasonable statement. But this is where it's not reasonable. Where you're hiding the fact that you're changing the deal. Like, I bought this in the store. Just because I have to download half of it off online because you're petty about pirates and you're butthurt that people customize their games aftermarket does not mean I should be punished with you making it where I don't even own the thing I bought. Like that, no, that's not how this works. I bought it. It's mine. You want the license thing? Put it on the package. Put it right on the bottom part of your package. You can easily put license, not ownership, or license, support, subject to end. Yeah. TOS has also lied to you a lot. And they changed them. Aftermarket. You cannot be changing your TOS aftermarket and expect it to hold up in law. That's called a scam. And every judge in probably the northern and southern hemisphere will call you out on it. They'll be like, you can't change the deal after it's already been made. Like that's quite literally what a scam is. You make me agree to this, and then a month or so more down the line, you change it to this, which is in direct contradiction to the previous agreement. No, that's a scam. No, go to jail.
You're renting a game, not really buying it outright. However, I want to go further. We need to retain something and ensure that...
They bury the early termination fee in the toes. In a lot of country that is illegal, but the fines are small, so...
Yeah. Illegal. Doesn't matter that it's in your TOS. That's illegal. Your TOS does not trump the law.
Publishers make the game playable for consumers long after they have pulled support from it. Just ensure that the game is accessible in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't mean that multiplayer functionalities have to remain online. It doesn't mean that the game has to be in the most optimal state. Even if we're talking about, say, like an MMO that has gone completely offline, but players are still able to access the content, it won't be optimal because they'd need other players to make the experience, the full experience. But at least the game functions enough where it doesn't feel like the product is completely gone. It's still functional enough where you can engage with it on some level. And that way the game hasn't been completely eradicated or made completely obsolete. That's what we're asking for. Now that's the bare minimum. Of course, the ideal scenario would be if players could establish their own private servers and find some way to even keep some aspects of the online functionalities still alive, but do it in a more private setting. But then there's also the fact that games are not online.
Hilariously, there are games on the iPad, and I mean the Kindle, that actually do this. Where they just give you all the microtransactions for free and stuff.
Independent might still get
Hello,
pulled from the
possibly
library
not,
if their
Dragon?
licensing
I'll
issues on the
stab you,
company's
Finn.
end, or if they have server issues, or if they just shut down entirely to the point where they can't support the ability for players to retain access to their digital games that are so unreasonable in the way consumers are able to completely lose the products that they purchased. This MP talks about The Crew, a game that did not need to be completely shut down. Ubisoft could have patched in offline play or allowed private servers. Going forward, the ask from many consumers is simple. If the industry plans to kill a game, it should ensure that consumers have a reasonable option to continue using their products for a single player experience or on private servers. Couldn't have put it better myself. The MPs all made, I think, really compelling cases here, but the UK's government, the representative who heard these issues, the Minister for Sport, Tourism, Civil Society and Youth, Stephanie Peacock MP,
Stop getting one guy. No, I am a dragon.
acknowledged consumer sentiment behind Stop Killing Games, but suggested there were no plans to amend UK law around the issue. So in the UK, at least, we're seeing a major setback in this particular movement. With
The issue is they haven't had a fire lit under them yet. Whereas if the 1 million signatures gets passed, that's basically a fire. Because that shows that more than 50% of your country agrees with this issue and wants it to change. Which, if you ignore that, people start losing their jobs. And I think they know that.
The government believing that this is just too unreasonable to implement for game developers and game companies. And I'll read the relevant statements from the government right here as transcribed by Video Games Chronicle. Quote, "The government recognized the strength of feeling behind the campaign that led to the debate. The petition attracted nearly 190,000 signatures. Similar campaigns, including a European Citizens Initiative, reached over 1 million signatures," referring to the Stop Destroying Video Games initiative that garnered actually closer to 1.4 million signatures. There's been significant interest across the world. Indeed, this is a global conversation because gaming is a global art form, a global mass mainstream form of media. The passion behind the campaign demonstrates that the core underlying principle is a valid one. Gamers should have confidence in the right to access the games that they have paid to play. Yeah, that only seems reasonable, but
I read the second paragraph and it pisses me off because it's a lie. It's literally something an executive from the gaming people would say. Even though there's literally games nowadays that do the exact opposite.
The government adds a but. At the same time, the government also recognized the concerns from the video game industry about some of the campaign's asks. Online video games are often dynamic, interactive services, not static products. And maintaining online services requires substantial investment over years or even decades. Games are more complex than ever before to develop and maintain, with the largest exceeding the budget of a modern Hollywood blockbuster. That can make
it extremely challenging to implement plans for video games that formal support for them has ended, risking creating harmful unintended consequences for gamers as well as video game companies. No. Categorically no. Legitimately no. And systematically no.
It extremely challenging to implement plans for video games.
Not true on all levels.
After formal support for them has ended and risks creating harmful unintended consequences for gamers as well as for video games.
Tearing the wrapping on a box to a game cartridge. No, no. Me opening the package to the game does not mean I agree to such a thing as a license. No, you don't get that.
That's just not a good excuse. Just because the products that the games industry makes are complex doesn't mean that suddenly absolve them of their responsibilities to consumers who pay them money. I'm not saying this is an easy ask, but it's certainly not an impossible ask because we've seen
it's not even close to hard. Like, I could pull up many games that easily made it playable. Small companies are able to do this. You're telling me your AAA multi-billion-dollar company can't do what a tiny little 5-people company can?
Time and again games that have gone offline, but they've implemented some kind of single-player
pack
that allow them to be accessed even if they're not officially supported. So it is possible. It's just not a model that has been enforced because it's easier for companies to just eradicate a game completely from the face of the planet. But just because something has been the norm doesn't mean it's a good norm. That's why there's a petition for change, because we want things to be different. We want a new normal, a new standard for consumer protection. Risks of creating harmful unintended consequences for gamers. What risks are?
There are zero risks. If you want to say, oh, people will get hacked and stuff. Do I need to pull up all the times you've already been hacked? And you're going to say, oh, but they can get hacked? Are
we talking about here? The risk of gamers getting to keep the products that they purchase? Because
that's the only risk here, is these companies potentially losing money because they don't want to try anymore.
Sounds great to me. As for consequences to video game companies, if you can't create products in an ethical way, then you shouldn't be making products at all. Being ethical is inconvenient, but you do it because it's the right thing to do. It's easier to take the immoral road, and that's why there are laws to ensure that those immoralities aren't something that you can get away with without consequences. Video game companies being able to strip products that you purchased away from you, regardless of whether they're physical or digital, It's just not right. And if laws are updated so that companies are forced to behave a certain way, then they will. And if that level of basic responsibility to consumers of like, hey, if you buy a product from us, you should get to keep it is too much for you, then don't be in this industry.
You don't deserve to be in the industry.
And
That's
don't
my
make
opinion.
products for consumers, and don't ask consumers for money to purchase your product if you can't fulfill your end of the bargain of that commerce transaction. The government's statement continues. A number of members have made points about ownership. It is important to note that games have always been licensed to consumers rather than sold outright. In the 1980s, tearing the wrapping on a box to a game's cartridge was the way that gamers agreed to licensing terms.
No. No.
Today, that happens when we click accept when buying a game.
It is a new and unfair business practice. Because before, the license was more for like, oh, you can't like sell this or use it like as yourself. Like, basically you can't like repackage and resell it. That was the idea of the old licensing and stuff. This new version is basically, oh, you can't use this at all when I make a new thing because I want you hook, line, and sinker forever. Or I don't want you to enjoy any of my products. Basically, they want a free money glitch, is what they're trying to get.
On a digital storefront. Licensing video games is not, as some have suggested, a new and unfair business practice. But with the purchase of a games cartridge, a game company can't break into your house and steal and take that cartridge. It just so happens that modern technology allows for game companies to essentially steal from you without being physically in your home.
That's literally what it is. It's quite literally, they're trying to have an infinite money glitch legally. And people are not happy with it.
And when a purchase you made is unreasonably stripped from you because of issues on the company's end, on the service provider.
Alan, they already made the money when I purchased the game. They don't get more money for doing nothing. They don't get to take the game I already purchased because I won't buy their new game. That's not how this works. If you don't see that, I don't know what to do for you. That's what they're saying, Alan. They say if you want to do that, make it clear. They're trying to say, but we don't need to make it clear. We can keep selling to the people that are dumb that think they're buying the game. That's literally what they're saying, Alan. They're saying either sell it as the product, like you used to do, or state clearly that this is a limited time purchase. They don't want to do that because they know that no one will accept that and that they will lose money. But you can't have both. This isn't a have and eat your cake too. You don't get infinite cake. If you want to have and eat your cake at the same time, no. I literally stated that 3 times already. I won't state it again. I will not repeat myself. If they want to do the licensing thing, be honest about it. Put it on the package, front line, and center. Because that should be what's required. What the Stop Killing Games movement is doing is saying, if you want to continue selling games as you always have, make it where we can use it afterwards. And you can't take it from us afterwards. Or state clearly that this is a license. And that it is limited time deal. And I bet you billions of dollars real money. I'll go into debt for this. That they don't want to do that because they know they'll lose about 50 to 70% of the people that purchase it. This is literally what will happen. And they know that. That's why they don't want to do that. That's why they want people to stop going through these legal channels.
End or on the product sellers end.
They went mask off when literally the company, the governing body that represents all the like EA and Ubisoft, you know, all the bad companies. By the way, they represent Nintendo too. Literally came out and said, "Hey, we understand you're very passionate about games, but stop." They told people to stop. Why? Why should I?
And when the consumer has done nothing wrong to warrant a product that they purchased being taken back from them, that is just unfair, and that is plain and simply just wrong. You can talk about the technicalities of licensing all you want, but purchasing video...
Yeah, they will, Alan. Here's the issue. Scalpers take advantage of the mentally ill and the very rich. The rich don't care. The mentally ill don't care because they don't understand or can't understand.
Game cartridges versus purchasing digital media. I mean, it's just a night and day difference in terms of the security that a customer is allotted in their ability to access the product. That
Oh, you mean the that really bad MMO? How long was it? It was a week. It was out a week. It wasn't even out a month. I think. Yeah.
they purchased.
I know,
Licensing video games may not be a new practice, but it has become an unfair business practice because of the sheer power and control it grants corporations over consumers' products. Consumers who can't do anything.
To give you an idea, I'll explain this a bit more simply, and I'll be done with my explaining for a bit. Right now, it is the equivalent of if I bought a printer, using my printer, and they sent a signal to it when their new printer came out that killed it. Made it unusable, like it burnt up or something on the inside. And unusable, unfixable. And then said, yeah, we got a better one out. It does 2 colors instead of 1. Oh, you're out of it? We don't support that model anymore. We'll give you like a discount of like $5 out of this $5,000 printer. There you go. There's the equivalent. That is what it will end up being. Scalpers do not stealth. They sell exactly what the company was selling. They're just a middleman. They change nothing.
If a corporation decides that you no longer own that
A lot of scalpers have started trying to sell the digital keys, by the way. So that's why I say that.
license, and therefore those products can just be stripped from you without your consent. To try to say that licensing video games is not a new and unfair business practice, and then make the comparison to games cartridges and the way you can purchase those and just keep them forever, the dissonance there is insane because you're practically describing how game purchases have become more and more unfair as things have become more digital and as the presence of the internet has granted companies just that much more control. The government's statement continues here: for gamers used to dusting off their Nintendo 64 to play Mario Kart whenever they like, or in my case Crash Bandicoot on the PlayStation, without the need for an internet connection, that can be frustrating. But it is a legitimate practice that businesses are entitled to adopt, so it is essential that consumers understand what they're paying for. Existing legislation is clear that consumers are entitled to information that enables them to make informed purchasing.
They're entitled to information. Yet, you won't put it on the packaging. You just you obfuscate it, make it hard to get said information.
Decisions confidently. You're literally saying this sucks for customers, but it's a legitimate practice And it's nothing new, and it's fair. Just because something is legitimate now and it's the standard and normal now doesn't mean that it should be the standard and the normal in the future. And the government says right here that it is essential that consumers understand what they're paying for, except companies have no incentive to be transparent on that front. They have no incentive to say what you're really doing is renting a game for a very long term rather than buying it outright. They keep using terms like buy and purchase as if to suggest to customers that you get to keep the product and access the product forever. They never actually try to warn customers that you won't get to keep these purchases forever.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. No one's saying you can't do that. But be damn honest about it.
Because they know that's bad for PR, but in doing so, consumers don't really understand what they're paying for because they're not being told what they're actually paying for.
Catherine!
Instead, they're being lied to through certain verbiage. The government statement then continues, under existing UK legislation, the Consumer Rights Act 2015 requires that digital content must be of satisfactory quality, fit
Which it hasn't been for a while.
for a particular purpose and described by the seller. I mean, that's already something that a lot of AAA releases fail at, releasing in really dodgy quality, and especially where live services are concerned, releasing in a state that is not adequate to what was marketed, so on and so forth.
Yep.
It also requires that the terms and conditions applied by a trader to a product that they sell must not be unfair and
It is absolutely unfair.
must be prominent and transparent.
It is not prominent nor transparent.
Video game companies are certainly failing at that. The Digital Markets Competition and Consumers Act of 2024 requires information to consumers to be clear and correct, and
It is not.
prohibits commercial practices that, through false or misleading information, cause the average consumer to make a different choice.
Imagine
The
if
average
Unit
consumer would
function
be
at
making a
launch.
different choice.
What game companies ultimately do is bury the appropriate information behind just pages of licensing agreements. Stuff
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. The TOS that these companies put out is, I said 80, 95. It's more like, I want to say 80, and then 20% is the actual information you want. 80% of it is fluff, BS, or licensing info that we don't need to know. Like, it's like stuff like, oh, this thing says you can't use our symbol in this particular way in this particular subject. And, like, if you agree that if you want to sue us, you have to do arbitration. That's already been debunked anyways. But they still put it in there because it's more info they can shove.
that they know people won't read. Instead of just warning
Exactly. The average person is not reading a TOS. The average person is skipping and clicking accept so they can play the game. They want to play the game. Basically, you're giving them is a blackmail to play the game. You're saying either accept these terms or don't play what you purchase. If you want to do that, put it at the start and make sure I read it all. But you won't do that because then I won't play it.
people
So I'll read
outright
it and
in
I'll see
simple
what you
terms when they
did.
purchase their video games that you won't get to keep these video games forever. You're not really buying these games to access for as long as you like, that you're actually just renting these for the long term or for as long as game companies deem it appropriate or are able to offer the services required for that game to be accessible. And by bearing all that information, they give consumers this false sense of security up until the day when the product vanishes from their library and they question what the heck happened because they didn't know that was even a possibility. Now, on the topic of transparency, the UK government does say that points were made about consumer law and ownership. UK law is very clear. It requires information to consumers to be clear and correct. The government are clear that the law works, but companies might need to communicate better. How lenient the government is being here in favor
They're not being lenient, they're being bribed.
of game companies, the verbiage that they're using, saying they might need to communicate better, not condemning them to the fullest degree, but being wishy-washy about where game companies are going wrong. Like, this doesn't present to me as a government entity that's taking consumer protection seriously. There's
It's
such
not. It's being bribed.
lack of scrutiny for how game companies are operating right now.
Which they won't be able to bribe them when the $1 million signature one gets done. Because a lot more people will be looking at that one and expecting a different response.
now. The statement then continues, in response to a specific point made by a member of parliament, I should say that it is particularly important in cases where projects fail or games have to be pulled shortly after launch that the information provided to consumers is clear and timely. And then we get to the meat of the argument, which is what the Stop Killing Games movement is all about, that even when a game dies, it should be on some level playable or accessible, or just on a fundamental level functional, not completely obsolete. On that front, the government said, I understand that the campaigners argued that rather than just providing clear information, games should be able to be enjoyed offline after developer support has ended, either through an update or a patch, or by handing over service to the gaming community to enable continued online play. In other words, mandating the inclusion of end-of-life plans,
which are very easy to do when you're making a game. They cost pennies compared to the rest of the game. Many games have proved this. Many big companies have said this. Larian has stated that they could do this easily, which they did. Gasp!
for always online video games, and also offline games with DRM implemented that will not be accessible if the product provider goes down, if there's some kind of licensing issue, so on and so forth. On that front, the government says that they're sympathetic to the concerns raised, but we also recognize the challenges of delivering such aims from the perspective of the video game industry. They're so light on the scrutiny of the games industry and so heavy in their defense of it. So the reasoning the government provides is that first, such a change in terms of implementing what Stop Killing Games wants would have negative technical impacts on video game development. It is true that there are some games for which it would be relatively simple to patch an offline mode after.
Wait. A recent example with a wireless connective thermostat. The manufacturer can disable at any moment. If you're lucky, they will send you a 25... I literally just described that still. That's quite literally what you're about to start getting with games. Is they'll turn off that game when the new one comes out and they'll say, hey, if you want the new one, we'll give you a discount. That's why they're increasing prices, by the way. They'll eventually sell you the game. $100. With like a 5% off coupon if you had the one previous.
Its initial release. However, the games whose systems have been specifically designed for an online experience, this would not be possible without major redevelopment. Except if you understood what this Stop Killing Games movement wanted,
it said no games before this. It's saying games in the future. It accepts that the old games that might be a little expensive. It's not saying that. It says in development and future games. Already cut you off at the pass there, buddy.
And what Stop Killing Games is asking for, it clearly states that it is not retroactive. Some games
not
have
retroactive.
been designed in that way, and there's nothing we can do about it. But
we're shit out of luck there. We understand that. Understandable. Have a nice day. Read the damn paper.
At least from here on out, if the new normal can be that all games need to consider some kind of end-of-life implementation so that the product doesn't completely vanish off the face of the earth and the product respects the commerce of consumers paying money for products that they should be able to keep and access, then we're good. If that can be the new normal, then, you know, we can move towards a better future. That's what we're asking for. We're not asking for retroactive readjustments. So yeah, the government doesn't understand this, insisting that requiring an end-of-life plan.
No, it's either clear they didn't read it, which means they didn't do their job. Think of a balance. Or, I'm going to be on or it means that they're reading off of a pamphlet that they were given by the person that bribed them. Because those people definitely didn't read it. So either you didn't read it or you didn't read it. You either didn't read it and lied, or you read it and you pretended not to understand. Or couldn't understand, which is worse. Which is it?
And for all games would fundamentally change how games are developed and distributed. Although that may well be the desired outcome for some campaigners, it is not right to say that the solutions will be simple or inexpensive, particularly for smaller studios. If they prove to be too risky or burdensome, they could discourage the innovation that is the beating heart of this art form. Yeah, let's play the smallest violin for those multi-million and multi-billion dollar corporations because they have to spend a little more effort and a little more money to enact features that are good for consumers. Ah, boo-hoo. They also don't really go into detail as to how implementing just basic end-of-life something to ensure a game is just on a fundamental level functional would discourage innovation. And then they try to say, won't you think about the smaller studios? But it's the smaller studios that are not beholden to major corporations that tend to push for the most consumer-friendly practices. And a lot of these smaller studios tend to make smaller scale games that don't require a certain level of expense or a certain level of complexity when it comes to keeping a game alive on some level with some kind of end-of-life plan. And not to mention that the practice of some kind of end-of-life plan is nothing new. We've seen games do it before. The government speaks of this concept as if it's something brand new and unheard of and something really fundamentally like landscape changing, when we have seen this practice enacted by certain studios that actually care about their art living on beyond the
One big example is Larian.
lifespan of the support of the game. And that's both big and smaller studios. So I guarantee you that just that basic fundamental request of preserve games and on some level keep them on a basic fundamental level functional is not this ask that will completely ravage the games industry and make it impossible to make games like that. That's just such a DEFCON 1 level of thinking. The statement continues. Secondly, the approach carries commercial and legal risks. If an end-of-life plan involves handing online servers over to consumers, it is not clear who would be responsible for regulatory compliance or for payments to third parties that provide core services. It could also result in reputational harm for video game businesses that no longer officially support their games of illegal or harmful
No, it would not. If you're that worried about it, you could put like a big statement that these companies have to do that says not licensed by said company anymore, or no longer licensed by Nintendo, for example.
Activity took place. The campaign is clear in its statement that it would not ask studios to pay to support games indefinitely. However, it is hard to see solutions to these issues that do not involve significant time, personnel, and monetary investment.
Lies.
Well, the thing is that people hosting private servers also have to follow the law. If they do something predatory with their private servers, then people will report them and they may very well get in trouble. The law discourages them from doing illegal things. And then as far as game companies are concerned, they can just add in their terms of service that once support and service ends for a game, what happens thereafter is not their responsibility, because it's quite literally not. These are not officially...
It's not. I don't see where we required them to be.
sanctioned activities, and people will do what they will with your product, regardless of whether you approve of it or not. And this concept of private servers for games that have been shut down, like, that's not a new thing. That already happens. You can't stop it. And a lot of niche communities are actually thriving off of that, because people who love the games that they want to keep alive, they do it out of love for the game, so they will ensure that it's a positive, good environment. Also, it's going to be such a small community, because if a game died due to a lack of a community, like enough of a player base for it to be able to be supported, then private servers is not something that will allow abuse on a grand scale. I'm not saying that there aren't drawbacks, but the drawbacks are far outweighed by the benefits of preserving games and allowing customers to have some kind of functional form of a video game that is no longer supported. The final point the government makes here is that, most importantly, from the perspective of gamers, there are the safety and security impacts to consider. Under the Online Safety Act of 2023, video game companies are responsible for controlling exposure to harmful content in their games. Removing official moderation from server or enabling community-hosted servers increases the risk that users, including children, could be exposed to such content. That risk is just inherent to the existence of the internet. Anyone can be exposed to anything. The law still applies to the people hosting these servers, so if something illicit or shady happens, then they can be reported. There is the law to ensure that they face appropriate consequences. With anything in the online environment, even just social media, there's an inherent risk that you'll be exposed to harmful content. But with these niche communities who are supporting games that have died off, like, the more likely scenario is that their love for the game will want them to ensure a more positive community, and it's going to be a small, tight-knit community. If you're going to talk about risks, risk is just an inherent part of freedom, right? But the benefits of freedom and people having agency over either their own self or, the products that they purchase, the benefits and the moral correctness of that, I think, outweighs any potential inherent risks, because risk will be inherent no matter what to anything we do.
Exactly.
Yeah, the conclusion that is drawn here is that security threats could also be more likely if player data is no longer protected on official servers, as if corporations don't
They get hacked every other week.
already collect data and abuse that shit. Although the government
They also abuse it and sell it, which no one agrees to.
or supportive of businesses are able to implement end-of-life plans voluntarily, we do not think that a blanket requirement is proportionate or in the interests of businesses or consumers. It is not in the interest of businesses. That's why they lobby against it, but it certainly is in the interest of consumers. The petitions that have garnered millions of signatures have spoken loud and clear, and yet you sit there and talk about what's in our best interest. When the consumers have spoken out loud about what they believe is in their best interest, the government then says our role is to ensure that those selling and purchasing games are clear about their obligations and protections under UK consumer law that is clearly flawed and incomplete due to the fact that companies are able to get away with far too much. The government then talks about the subject of video game preservation, saying the following on that front. The government recognizes the cultural value of games and actively support initiatives that promote and support that, whether through cultural institutions such as the National Video Game Museum and London Science Museum, digital distribution platforms, or individual video game companies donating their games and hardware to preservation organizations. We recognize that preserving games can be uniquely complex, in particular when they rely on specific hardware or software to function as intended. We welcome ongoing discussions between the industry, national museums, libraries, and archives about developing standards for game preservation. We encourage video game developers and publishers to continue considering preservation efforts when developing, releasing, and supporting their
We
games.
encourage. No, you don't.
Like, this does absolutely nothing. They encourage things to happen, but those
That does nothing.
things can't happen and are not incentivized to happen if there aren't laws in place to ensure that they happen. You keep talking about encouraging businesses to partake in these consumer-friendly actions or actions that are, overall good for the long-term history of gaming, but corporations have no interest in any of that. All they care about is making money, which is why unless there are laws in place to force them to do certain things that are overall good for the industry and for the business and for the preservation of history and for consumers, they have no reason to do it, and they won't. You encouraging them to do it doesn't mean that they will. You encouraging them to take action doesn't do jack shit. That's what their governments and legislations and laws, because simply encouraging someone to do or not do something isn't enough. There have to be consequences for actions that do not overall serve, quote unquote, the greater good of something. Yeah, the ultimate conclusion drawn by the government is that we do not think that mandating end-of-life plans is proportionate or enforceable, but hey, at least they recognize the concerns of gamers about whether information on what they are purchasing is always sufficiently clear. To me, that's just the equivalent of sending thoughts and prayers, like, just keep them. Your recognition of concerns doesn't do shit if you don't do anything actionable. Recognizing concerns means jack shit if you don't enforce any laws that help prevent those concerns. And also, the concern from gamers isn't about whether things are sufficiently clear, it's whether the products that they purchase from game companies will one day get stolen from them or not. That's the concern. As for what the future holds, they say here, following this debate, our two departments will consider the case for asking the Institute to develop guidance to help businesses to ensure that the information provided to video game consumers accurately reflect existing consumer protections. It is vital to take into account the right of consumers while continuing to support the growth of our world-leading video game industry with its benefits to the wider economy. So yeah, as far as the most recent legislative discussions are concerned surrounding Stop Killing Games, it's a big old dud. Now, in the grand scheme of things, this is one minor setback. There's still the European Union, the European Citizens Initiative, the one that garnered, 1.4.
Yeah, once that one goes through, I don't think you're going to see the same answers. You're going to see a lot of actual action being taken.
Million signatures. They're still counting signatures
Yeah,
on
John,
that
that's
front.
literally
And once
the
those
question.
signatures are verified, the European Union will come together and discuss this issue. And that's the one that's really going to matter. That's going to be like the Super Bowl of this discussion. But as far as UK specifically is concerned, unfortunately, the government's inability to really
This guy has been bribed.
sympathize with
This guy's going to be on a lot of gamers' hate lists,
consumers' concerns,
which is sad. I don't think that should be the case.
sympathizing more for game corporations instead has paved the road to this being a bit of a setback when it comes to realizing the normalization of what Stop Killing Games is asking for. But just because we've lost one battle doesn't mean that the proverbial war is over. Far from it. And I'll keep reporting on this as new developments come by. But in terms of the latest happenings, this is everything you need to know. And I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on the UK government's deliberations and their excuses and responses and their statements surrounding this whole issue and why they deliberated the way they did in the comments below. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on YongYea. I'll see you guys next time. Yong out.
Lol.